Hello and welcome back to the 1904 Club, the Hull City podcast from the Hull Daily Mail. And for the first time in weeks, we've got a full complement. Burnsy, Fletch, well, for now, Fletch anyway, and he sorted out his technicals for the time being. And Prutts, well, I'm in heaven. How are we all? Burnsy, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm looking forward to it. Bit of chat, bit of football, bit of chat, bit of football.
And look at his smiley little face, Fletcher. Oh, how are you, mate?
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. I swapped Plymouth for Toulouse this weekend and went and watched a bit of rugby on the gravy train. So it was all good. Nice city, actually. I would hugely recommend it. It's very. If anyone's been to Barcelona, Toulouse is very similar. Lots of boulevards and lots of nice little drinking spots. It was really nice, really good.
Oh, very nice.
It's like working with Judith Chalmers.
Is after Badger's TripAdvisor job, isn't it? This.
That's why I've got a hoodie on today. Still feeling the Mediterranean sun.
They're hassling me for my Chicago piece, so I better get that done. And there's Prutts. Oh, hi, Prutts.
How are we? It's nice to see you all together. It's lovely, yeah. I will echo what Fletcher said. Toulouse is a great city. And I'm intrigued to hear more about your Chicago piece. Not euphemism, is it, or actual work?
No, I've got to do it.
Sorry.
I've got to get it in because they want it, and I want another one of those. So I need to get it in the paper so they can give me another trip to Chicago.
And Chicago's called the Windy City because
of the smell.
No, the politicians talking rubbish.
That as well, but there was a stench there after the fire.
That's where it comes from, the Windy City, because it's not because it's windy or anything meteorological related. It's because of politicians talking rubbish back in the day. Fact.
Who'd have thought it?
Done. Let's see what. Bye.
Oh, man, thanks for coming for that. Your Prutts. No, your Prutts.
Yeah. My work here is done.
Yeah. Well, Burnsy, shall we kick off with some transfers? Because I know we need to dissect Plymouth on Saturday, and we need because I've not recovered. My heart hasn't recovered from what I saw in the first half. But we need to talk transfers, don't we? Because there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. Where are the strikers? And I know they've got the lad in from Chelsea, and we'll talk to Prutts about him because he'll know him from he'll have seen him at Sunderland, Mason Burstow. But where are the strikers? They don't seem to be linked with many strikers. And with the possibility of Oscar going out, I'm thinking, strikers. What's the situation? What do we know? Maybe we'll come to Prutts first on Mason Burstow.
Yeah, let's do that.
Well, I think it's broadly, well, the first part of that question about strikers is absolutely pertinent, given as well what we saw on Saturday, which we'll come into detail. Again, I mean, someone like Mason, it really does reflect Hull City's ability to recruit players with decent pedigree, I think. Obviously, off the back of that, it's whether that pedigree does turn itself into tangible effort and impact on the football pitch, which with any signing that you make, we've spoken about it at length over a long period of time. It's a bit of a punt, and we go back to those players that came in January as being a bit of a punt. Some came off and some didn't. But I think given potentially what it could bring to the side, it's a good addition. I was reading your piece, Baz, about the recruitment structure. And it's going to be a very busy time between now and the end of the window. So those ones, am I right in thinking there were? Would you class it as a hat trick of signings at the end of the last week
on Friday afternoon or Friday evening? Yeah.
And then going into a game at the weekend, which with the aforementioned heart attack football very much in full effect, then players like Mason, players like the trio that came in, of course, they're only going to help. He needed reinforcements. Hopefully, it's a glimmer of it being Tim's players. Is that an outdated kind of reference to management bringing in players, possibly? But still another week left, of course, to ship out and ship in.
Go on, Burnsy.
He didn't get rave reviews from the Sunderland fans, did he?
Sunderland's a funny one because of the expectation, the way that they've manoeuvred managers in and out. There's obviously a clean sweep now with Labrise going in, and now possibly there's a bit more, consistency to what they want. But I thought that Tony Mowbray did a wonderful job. I think that was echoed with a lot of people. And then some of the expectations change for the next season when you get into the playoffs. So I thought he was harshly done by being moved on, and I think history's told us that possibly at that time that wasn't the right direction for them to move in. But I think, maybe I'm not being too kind to him there, Burnsy, because every player's they're responsible for their own performance and impact on the football club, and just because there might be slightly a bit of consternation off the field, I don't think you can blame that too much. But hopefully, I mean, as we've seen with players that have come into City that feel relatively settled and are here for an extended period, then more often than not, I think City and the management at the time have got something out of them. Would you agree?
Yeah, fair point. Yeah. I mean, it's horses for courses, and
absolutely
is another poison, and I'm trotting out loads of cliches, so I'll shut up. Strikers. They need strikers, though, don't they, Baz? Any strikers on the list?
So there's three that they're looking at. And I believe, from what I was told last night, that they are close to one of those three. I've not seen the names out anywhere yet, so we'll have to wait and see. It would be a permanent deal, and they will be paying money. So there was the lad, I forget his name now. There's that many names kicking around. The Slovak lad from they were trying to sign last week. That went quite far down the line, and I think then the player decided that he didn't want to come to the Championship. So that hasn't happened. But they know. We all know, and it's obvious they need a striker. And I've not seen enough from Oscar yet to suggest that he is going to be the player that is going to score the goals they need. The caveat to that, and I said this on Saturday, what's really annoying about Oscar, he scored a brilliant goal on Saturday, really back to goal, turned on his left foot and bent it in the far corner beyond the goalkeeper. Wonderful finish. He was offside, and that's been the theme again. In the three competitive games we've watched so far, his movement and his lack of movement is getting him offside. So many times against Bristol City, and then against Sheffield Wednesday when he came on, he gets particularly against Bristol City, he was pulling wide, and he was in acres of space, and he's looking right along, and it does your head in. You look, he's a striker. He's looking bang across the line, goes too early, flag up, and I just don't see enough from Oscar yet. But what I would say, he's played a lot of football this year in the last 12 months. He's still getting to grips with being back in England, getting to grips with the system of Volta, and it is ridiculous compared to everything else we've seen. So I don't want to be too harsh on Oscar, because he's a great lad. And I know he's trying, but it's just not happening at the minute. But as I said, that goal on Saturday was wonderful. But it means nothing.
the thing is as well, when you talk about Oscar, and as we've already discussed, Mason, and what potentially he could bring, and that kind of youthful energy, effervescence, and hopeful reaction to that time of Sunderland that Burnsy was talking about. And again, it's something that I always try and bear in mind when it comes to signings. Yes, you get this player and his attributes, but it can change the chemistry within a club for good and bad. But hopefully, you look at it in a positive sense of a young kid coming through the door with experience of a club like Chelsea and Sunderland, and maybe it gives it in the best possible way a collective kick up the backside from people that are already there. And plus, his attributes might bring something out of the players that are playing in the wider positions. Hopefully, the attitude and the application of someone like Mason is absolutely spot on, because it needs to be, and maybe that rubs off on someone like an Oscar, who, as you say, terrific teammate, good lad, works hard. That's always a bit of a sticking point if you don't quite understand what is onside and what is offside. But I'm slightly taking the mickey there. But it's part of hopefully the developmental side of what Tim wants to see. But I think we'd all agree that there is a fascination to what he wants to do. But if that fascination's still there in October, November, December, when we're still kind of going, well, collectively this hasn't been picked up across the board, and City are losing time in games, then that's a slightly more concerning thing. But I'm trying to remain positive with it, because there's been a lot of positives to kind of draw on, I think, from what we've seen.
Fletch, where are you at with the striker situation, and what was your initial thought process on young Mason Burstow?
Well, I think if you take the Sunderland season in isolation, people are going to think that Mason, for me, is going to be a number 2 or number 3 choice in the pecking order. So when you're a player that's in young 20s, we've always said you need game time. You need to be getting a consistent run of games. So without being disrespectful to the lad, I fear that if he's going to be on the bench week in, week out, how does that aid his progression? He needs to be in a situation where he holds that number 9 position as his own, which is a big responsibility. There's 2 sides to it. If he does start games under Tim Volter's strategy, he's going to get service eventually, and he's going to get those opportunities to score goals. However, if you want to link it in with Oscar and what you've just been touching upon there, and whether Tim likes him or not, it could fall under the same situation with Liam. And the thing that I can see is I've always preferred Oscar playing in a 2 rather than as the lone striker.
Yeah,
I always think Oscar preferred to have someone running off him. Even though Tyler Smith in a Hull City shirt was limited, I actually think he gave Oscar a little bit of a dimension in the sense of he could actually, hold up play and get people in around him, which is quite old school. And I guess in the Championship, when you've got a player who plays up front, who for me is like Rajovic at Watford, where he scores basically anything from 6 yards to 0 yards, that's quite limited. I think that's quite easy for him to be picked up, and that's maybe why he's offside all the time, because he's got to really work out where he's running to. So that's the part of his game that I agree he needs to work on, even though he does score goals. But I agree with Burnsy right at the top. I think they need another 2 strikers in the building. I would always have 2 sets of 11 in my mind, and they're very, very limited up front at the moment, in the sense you've got to, but if one's going out, I wouldn't be pinning everything on Mason straight away. I would want somebody in there to rotate with him if he doesn't cut the mustard one week, and then they can go toe-to-toe in training.
They created an awful lot of moments on Saturday. They had, I think it was 14 shots on goal. They only hit the target with 2 of them, and one of them was the banger from Louis Coyle. But they did have, they had 28 touches in the penalty area, which was an awful lot more than Plymouth. They're getting in good areas. They're creating really good moments. They are just lacking that killer instinct, I think. And I don't think Burstow is going to be the frontline centre forward. I think the guy that they bring in, who will probably wear the number 9 shirt, is going to be their frontline striker. Now, Fletch, what you said there about bringing 2 more strikers in, I'm not sure they will. I think there's one more coming in. Obviously, if that'll give them 3, and Malem can play further forward, Abdouch can play further forward. Obviously, if Oscar goes, which we know there's interest, and it wouldn't surprise me, nothing concrete at this stage, but it wouldn't surprise me if he did by the time we get to 11 o'clock next Friday night. Then obviously they've got to move quickly and get somebody else in. They've got a list. There's 3 names that I've been given that I've seen that they're considering. I think
in England, Baz.
They're not based in England, no.
Okay.
But what I would say,
we're going to tickle his toes. Should we get the torture equipment out, the feather duster out?
We talked about this before. Like Stansfield is the one that everybody seems to be clamouring for. Birmingham are desperate. Birmingham would do anything to get him back. Stoke are interested. I think I saw Blackburn linked yesterday. Stansfield is the one that is going to be running the run-in. I don't think at this stage that is something they're looking to do. But again, things change. Prutts, this is something you can probably elaborate on. Just how clubs can sometimes get caught up in the fervour of the final 3 or 4 days of deadline day, and they see a player, they see other clubs going for him, and suddenly that panic, not panic, maybe that's a stretch, although there is panic at some clubs, that desperation to think, well, we'll get him so they can't have him, and actually we'll mould him into our system. That is a thing, isn't it?
Yeah, mould him into the system rather than being actually good for the system. And it's funny how somebody that they may look at now, today, and kind of go, suddenly becomes a lot more kind of attractive as the transfer window rolls on, akin to I don't know, a footballing version of beer goggles on a Saturday night, you know. Yeah, but when it comes to getting them in the door, it's such a good point, because you look at it and maybe snatching them off a potential rival, and it not quite being, that should be the main motivating factor. It should be a player that fits your system and is ready to go, given as well where we find ourselves in the season. It's not the first day of pre-season. It's knocking on the door almost a month into the season, obviously come the end of August. So there is an element of that. Fletcher's point is absolutely right about what other players can bring. When you look at, as I said, when you're judging a signing on his standalone merits, that's only half the job. It's what he can bring out in other players, whether you bring someone like a Burster in that gets someone else to come and help his game, or if he can dovetail into what Oscar wants in a system that Tim wants to play. That remains to be seen. You look at, was it 1 goal in 20 last season at Sunderland in a tricky period, but there's always elements of surprise, and I'm not saying it happens all the time, but names do stick out sometimes in the Championship that perhaps you wouldn't think so. Chuba Akpom of Borough, he was out the door, wasn't he? Ends of the season as the top scorer in the Championship, moves on to pastures new. Chris Wood back in the day becoming the top scorer in the Championship. Yes, these players have got a bit of pedigree behind them. Sammy Smodic's scoring goals like they're going out of fashion last season and hitting the ground running this. So you can't. It's a funny one to try and quantify, because until we see him with our own eyes in a City shirt with City players around it, and I'm not trying to turn this into a Mason chat, but you never know what he could possibly throw up for City going forward. But there is, again, that air of caution that Burns is sounding, I'm very much on board with, because it's a team that is very much a work in progress. And if you're relying on your fullback to score worldies to get you a point away at Plymouth, then it's going to be, and I mean that with the greatest respect to Levy, I think he's a fantastic player, and he was a terrific goal. And I said it before we started recording, I would have been in that City away end for the best part of 10 minutes. I love his professionalism, jogging back to try and get something from the game. But my God, if you're scoring goals like that, you've got to enjoy it with the people that are there. But it's an intriguing, and the other side of it is the price. Going back to that as the window narrows down, Baz, it's whether you get value for money, and value for money only manifests itself further down the line, doesn't it?
Yeah, Burnsy, you were waving vigorously.
No, I would. We've unless we're going to have to, come through the torture and get those names out here, Baz. We'll move on to midfielders, because they seem to be linked with midfielders. Jonas Meffert at Hamburg, who Tim Walter knows well, obviously having had him at Hamburg and a couple of other clubs, I think. Also, a little link with Lewis Travis at Blackburn. Anything in that one?
Yeah, so let's start with Meffert. I feel so there is interest there, and I think the player he played just over an hour last night in the Hamburg 7-1 cup win. I think he would quite like the move. He obviously was a big part of Walter's system at Hamburg. The archetype number 6. Very, very defensive. Does the shielding job, but it's like with anything, isn't it? They'll have lists, and they'll have target 1, target 2, target 3, target 4, and so on. And I think Meffert probably is on that list, but falls a bit further down the list. Lewis Travis they want him. There is no doubt about that. They want him. I think there's some, from what I've heard, they are. I know there was some suggestion of 3 million. I think Blackburn's valuation, and obviously Blackburn are in a position where they've already lost Adam Wharton, albeit in January. Travis is another big part, although he spent the end of last season at Ipswich because Thomason didn't want him. But he's come back in. It looks like he's going to be a big part of Blackburn under John Eustace. He's got another couple of years on his deal, but City want him. So it's whether they can find some common ground to do that deal. Obviously, Blackburn won't want to wait until the end of deadline day and lose him and not be able to replace him. So, we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But there's definite interest. They want him. They're just some way away from where City value him and where Blackburn value him. So that's one to keep an eye on. There's also Gustavo Puerta from Bayer Leverkusen, who he spent a period on. He signed for Leverkusen. Went out on loan to Nuremberg, came back, ended the season at Leverkusen last year, obviously when they won the the German title. So that there's a lot of competition for him. I think Rangers are in for him, Bromby, Red Star Belgrade, and one or two other clubs. So that's one to keep an eye on.
Coming to City then, isn't he?
Say again?
He's not coming to City then when you mention those clubs.
Well, it depends, though, doesn't it? It depends on what City are offering.
Can we say about Chevalier as well?
She makes a fair point. It depends on what
Take your point, Fletch.
you're offering him. You know, his what does he want? Does he want to come and play in England? You know, there's that. So that's one that's ongoing. That from what I've seen, they need reinforcements in midfield, because Saturday was that first half, particularly the first half of the first half was chaos. It was chaotic. They had no control. Xavier Simons tried his best, but he was just getting overrun. Regan Slater, I don't know if he's not happy or what the situation is with Regan, but he's being shoved out wide in the midfield, and they're not getting the best from him. They're just being completely trounced through midfield. Seri came off the bench against Wednesday and added huge control in the second half. He did, yeah, he did. And he wasn't involved at all. He was on the bench, but he didn't get off the bench on Saturday. I think the smart money would be on Mika Seri going. We've had something go up this morning with Tim saying, "Oh well, he's a key part of the squad. That he's played for some big clubs, but it's up to Mika." So, and Mika, I think, is understandably, Mika's not going to want to sit on the bench and play second, third, fourth, fifth fiddle. So he will want to go and play, and rightly so. So,
but is he not playing because it's very far down the line that he might be going, or is it because he's not fitting into what Tim wants? Because from what you're saying, of the two league games we're talking about so far, was Simons and obviously Slater playing slightly wider against Plymouth rather than more centrally as he did in the first game. That isn't working for you, is it?
No, they're not. They've got no. And I don't want to keep comparing things to last season because it's chalk and cheese. But when you think of Hull City last season, however it looked like in terms of goals and all that sort of stuff, they played. You knew when you watched the Liam team, Burnsy and Prutts, they would play with control. That team would have control of. It didn't always work. There were some games where they didn't have so much and they lost or whatever. But generally, that team played with a huge amount of control in the game, and everything was really well choreographed. And they controlled the game with and without the ball. On Saturday, it was that first half was like a basketball game on speed. It was just there was no control in midfield, and because of that, they were so open. And a lot of their problems came from the goalkeeper, the Pandor, playing poor passes out, and they would they'd give the ball away on the edge of their own box.
That early chance was ridiculous. I mean, it's akin to what you saw from the Southampton goal against Newcastle, wasn't it? It's a very, very innocuous position that suddenly a poor pass, and everyone's capable of a poor pass. Everyone's got a mistake in them, but you look at that and you think, I mean, that's so unforced. It's scary from a City fan's point of view, because and you're playing against a Plymouth side who were awful on the first day, better in the week against lower league opposition, and seemingly potentially finding a bit of rhythm to what they want to do under Rooney. But I'm not saying that they were there to be got at, but it sounded like they were there to be got at.
Well, it was. I couldn't believe what I was watching, because Oscar kicked. It was from the kickoff. Oscar kicked off. The ball went to Louis Coyle on the right hand side, and he sort of ran almost to like the halfway line, and instead of going forward, turned back on his left, and then all of a sudden the press from Plymouth was on. Coyle went back to Jones. Jones got himself in a right tangle, played a really floppy ball and gave it away. And they got suddenly within the first 20 seconds, Plymouth have got a shot on goal and Pandor's got to go down to save it. We saw it against Wednesday. Wednesday scored within 25 seconds because the ball went to Liam Miller. He gave it away and they were in. They can't do that. And I think the manager was really annoyed afterwards because he kept talking about we kept going back when I want to go forward. And that was the sense with Louis. He went far side. Maybe the pass down the line wasn't on or it was blocked. So he had to turn and come back. And suddenly, as soon as they go back, Plymouth are like a herd of bees. They sense that danger, and they sense that they can press and win the ball, and they're going to give it away. And Jones gave it away and banged, and it wasn't a great shot. My concern, and this is something that only will be borne out in time, but when and this is no disrespect to Bristol City or Plymouth, but against better opposition, they will get punished. Plymouth were fairly awful in front of goal. They had, Pandor. There was one in the first half. Pandor gave the ball away on the edge of his box, and Joe Edwards shot wide. Well, against a Burnley, a Sheffield United, a Leeds, perhaps that doesn't happen. That's in the back of your net.
Well, I mean, having watched Leeds on Saturday, I think you'll be safe with them at the moment.
Well, we've got them in just a week on Saturday, haven't we? So coming back to the midfielders, I can see completely why they want somebody like Travis, or Meffert is obviously another one from Hamburg. They want that. He wants that control. He wants that control, and he said it to me on Saturday.
Good play, Travis. I think if he's an option, obviously we thought we were all scratching our heads in the nicest possible way when we saw him move last season from a team that was kind of fair to middle into one, obviously, that ultimately ended up in the Premier League, and he looked delighted because there was obviously something up with the structure at Blackburn and everything that went with that. But he's a player with experience that can, I don't know, run that middle portion of a football match with the requisite kind of skill set of communication and getting about the pitch and getting the most out of teammates. So that gap potentially that's left by a Seri, with your demand for control, Baz, he could fit that really well. But of course, it's whether the money side of it actually works as well.
What's your thoughts?
Well, I'll come to Seri in a minute. I just wanted to, because people have sent us stuff at the 1904 Club on Twitter, and credit to Jordan Garnett, who actually raised the question of Gustavo Puerta from Leverkusen. So he'd spotted that there might be something in it. You're telling us that there is. Seri to me, I saw him against Sheffield Wednesday, and he gave them an element that wasn't in the game. They looked a better side. Maybe not moving the ball as quick, and that might be a concern for Walter. But the way I'm reading the situation, he's going to go. And I've got concerns about not only where do they get the control from, but also that leaves a gap in terms of experience in the side. And I know you've talked to the manager about it. So what's he saying about it? It doesn't appear to be a concern for him.
Yeah,
or it is for me.
Yeah, it's a concern for me.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah, and if you take Seri's 33, they've lost, the likes of Christie and people would debate this all day long, but Matt Ingram and Ryan Allsop were both north of 30. Obviously, Christie, and if Seri goes at 33,
Doc as well, people like that. Yeah.
Say again?
Doc as well. That collective experience.
Big experience, and I think Louis Coyle at 27, 28 would be the next one down. Travis would be 26. They haven't got a lot of experience, particularly championship experience. I know, again, Travis has got, he's played over 200 games in the championship, so he's got that. But yeah, Tim, I asked Tim this the other day. He doesn't seem concerned. He doesn't feel that you have to be 35 to have experience. He said he used Charlie Hughes as the example, and obviously he was one of the three on Friday. That he's played He's played over 70 games for Wigan, and he's got experience. He doesn't see it like we as probably traditionalists would see. Well, you need to, if you're going to be successful in the championship, you need 2 or 3 players that are over 30 that have played 500 games, and they need X, Y, and you need X, Y, and Z. And I was going to raise this later on actually, but it's relevant now. If you look at, so they've signed 9 players so far. If you look at the ages of those players, Hughes is 20. Zambrano, will come on to him shortly, he's 20. Burstow's 21. Drame is 22. Malem is 26. Giles is 24. Rachopi is 25. Burns is 21. And Liam Miller is 24. Travis is 26. Puerta is 21. And obviously Meffert, I don't think it's going to happen, but if it did, he's 28. The profile, I really like the profile of ages they're going for. I really do like that. But there's nobody over 30. Is that Prutts? Is that just us as traditional championship observers thinking, maybe we've been a bit making too much of it?
I wouldn't say so, because we're only going off the experience of what we've seen and potentially what does get you up and out of a division. You could to try and use it as a comparison, you could say, I mean, there was Championship and experience now there last season, but it still wasn't in the didn't get him in the playoffs, did it? We talked about Billy coming in and what he could possibly do, and he's hit the ground running with Donny as well, hasn't he? Christ, but he didn't really get a look in from that point of view. There was a reliance on when Liam came back, and obviously with Jaden, younger players doing their bit. And when you say about Louis, he's got a foot in either camp of having a lot of experience with Hull City, but still being youngish in comparison to potentially players that were there before. So I understand how traditionally we could look at that. I'm just racking my brain now for you look at teams that have gone up last season, the teams that have gone up the seasons before. And I would say by and large, it's always a mixture. But there is a tendency leaning back towards younger players because not only from the point of view of what you're going to get out of the player, but what potentially you get out of the player if you sell him on. So there'll be absolutely a bona fide business decision behind that sell on value of players. We talk about City hopefully becoming a destination football club for players, but more often than not, most players, whichever football club it is, are passing through, aren't they? And if you can pass through and get more money off the back, then that does make sound financial sense in the meantime of helping each other and it being mutually beneficial. So if again, that element of being slightly concerned about that lack of experience of the here and now in the Championship, I would sincerely hope it's tempered if you're a City fan by going, bloody hell, all these young lads that are full of football and life and energy and a point to prove across the board. Brilliant. Prove that point with City. Collectively prove that point with Tim wanting to prove his point as a Championship manager in a new division, in a new city, in a new country. So there's plenty to be positive about, and hopefully that doesn't sound kind of knowingly kind of twee, but it's as much as, like you say, you want that bit of experience. We mentioned with great respect the players that have been and through the door, but Doc's impact was, from his point of view and the type of player that he is, minimal last season, possibly the same with Cyrus. Yes, fitness issues come with players that are slightly older. And Billy didn't get the game time that possibly he wanted, nor we thought he would do. So experience doesn't equal absolute results, but in my opinion.
Fletch is back with us now after going to do the news. Fletch, we're just talking about experience and potentially lose it. Well, it looks like we're going to lose Mika Seri. And then the age profile of the signings they've made this summer are much younger. And Tim talking about the fact, because I put it to him the other day to Tim, that if Seri goes, Louis Coyle at 28 is the next oldest player in the squad. Does he need more experience? And Tim was very much of the opinion, well, Charlie Hughes has got experience. He's only 20, but he's played 70 games. So I'll come to you in a minute. Burnsy, does that, in terms of that conversation there, then does that answer your question about the experience and potentially losing Seri?
Well, yeah, but we can only wait and see really as to how it pans out and see where they go. It's just I'm only looking at Seri in terms of what I've seen with my own eyes so far and that element of control. But I always think experience and you need some wise heads. But if the coach is happy with having a younger squad, then fine. Let's see what happens. Let's see how it all pans out. Yeah, let's see. But they obviously need to do some business. Somebody's asked us on the 1904 club, the strangely named Doncoid, what was the fee for Mason Burstow? Our reports of around £2 million, correct? Was there a fee?
There was. I don't think it was that. I don't think it was that. In fact, I know it wasn't that. So no, a lot less than that. I don't think they'd have done it at £2 million, to be fair. No disrespect to Mason, because you're buying potential, but £2 million for a player that is, hasn't played that many games at senior level, didn't really cut the mustard at Sunderland last season and needs a fresh start. I think £2 million is a stretch. Fletch, and Benji, I'll come back to you because I know we've got a lot more questions to at the 1904 club. Fletch, where do you stand on the experience, quote unquote, conversation? Because they haven't got a huge amount. There's no players in the squad over 30 if Seri goes, which is quite unusual at Championship level. Prutts, you referenced it then. If you think when a couple of years ago when Sheffield United went up, that a lot of that squad, the likes of Norwood, Basham, they've got a lot of experience. Yeah. Fletch, where are you at with it?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you can look at it at point A and think, right, age is almost, the older you are, the more experienced you are. But, you could be a goalkeeper at the age of 35 and not play a single season. You could just sit as a number 2 all year if you really wanted to. But if you lost Seri, I certainly think it would be a big miss. I think that element of control that Burnsy talks about, by far and away, one of the most controlled players I've seen in a black and amber shirt for some years. I would probably go as far back to say, and Burnsy may agree or disagree with this, when he first joined, he reminded me of Tom Huddleston, just that ability to hold the ball in midfield, spray it about. And I think the downside of age, and I accept that this isn't for every player, is speed. You lose speed as you get older. And I think, judging by the way City are going to have to defend at times this season, either against the counter-attack, I find that Seri in particular, plus maybe one or two others, haven't got the legs to be able to scramble and get back in shape and be able to defend these chances, which I still think, without being too negative, could possibly cost them at times this season. I really do. I still feel the way too open for me. So, in summary, I think Seri going would be a big miss, but that's because of his ability, not because of his age. If the players have had enough mileage in games, regardless of their age, there shouldn't be a problem. But then again, you're losing someone like Jacob Greaves, who was always going to go because of his ability. But what was it, 200 games he'd played by his age? Something like that, which is very rare. Very rare for someone of his age. So my argument is that there shouldn't maybe not look at the age, just look at the number of games they've played at certain levels, is how I would describe it.
Prutts, if you look at City's team from Saturday and you take out, let's say you take out McLaughlin and you put in Charlie Hughes, you take out Simons and you put in Travis, does that give you? Do you think that team has, particularly with Travis in the six, gives you more confidence that team can control games and not be so open in transition?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd go along with that. Obviously, further up the pitch, if you are trying to get someone to complement Oscar as well with what Fletch was saying, the hold-up play, and giving you a platform further up the pitch, then I absolutely do think it does. It's making the most, and we discussed as well about potentially what Ryan's going to bring to the side playing at fullback and whether he's dovetailing in well with Liam down the left-hand side. That then releases potentially that side of the pitch to get forward and do what they're there to do, which is put crosses into the box. Maybe make the game a bit more straightforward for Oscar. I'm not saying this in a condescending sense. If you're talking about a player that seemingly is floating always offside, by virtue of getting to the pitch and whipping balls into the box, again, without sounding condescending, there's less chance of him finding himself offside, isn't there? It becomes a little bit more straightforward. And I do think with those changes, yes, they are slightly hypothetical, but it does give you a semblance of having of grabbing back the middle part of the pitch, which I think. But again, we are comparing what we've most recently seen with Liam in charge, aren't we? And maybe the chaos that comes with it being a bit more frantic, as harsh about first as this sounds, as the players get more used to that lack of control, if that makes sense, allows them to flourish in the chaos. Yeah, that's me. I mean, I don't have a coaching badge to my name. I've watched a lot of football. I've played a lot of football, but putting a team together, I understand is way more intricate and way more sophisticated than just going, right, sod it, bomb forward, let's see what happens. Because that then, as we've all said, leaves you wide open at the back, which then, when you hear about it being a certain level of football, it then becomes that because you are hanging on for dear life.
One thing I wanted to bring up, because you remember we had young Henrik on earlier in the summer, and he gave us an insight, didn't he, into what life would be like under Tim. You remember, Burnsy?
Yeah, indeed. It was very enlightening with his heart attack football, which sounds so much better in German as Herzinfarkt football. You've got to be very careful with that phrase. Don't use it on the telly. Prutts. You'll get yourself in trouble.
I will easily mangle that.
Yeah, so I spoke to Wayne Rooney on Saturday after the game, which was, I always enjoy talking to Wayne because he's great value, and he was laughing about it. And he was saying that he'd read some of the stuff in the week build up to the game about, he was trying to do his own research about Tim and what to expect, and he referenced the heart attack football. And I can safely say after 10 minutes, I looked across to young Trotter from the club, and we both sort of gazed into each other's eyes and said our hearts can't take this much longer, and that was after 10 minutes. But I spoke to Henrik over the weekend because we were talking about Meffert, funnily enough, and also he asked me how it was going and blah blah, and I said, look, mate, we've had 3 competitive games. That was the second league game, and after 10 minutes of the game at Home Park, it was I wanted to, I don't know, I needed to lie down in the dark room and a massage, and he said it took, when Tim first arrived at Hamburg, it kind of took about 5 competitive games. It was chaos for 5 games, and you didn't know what was going to happen. It was mental. And then after the 5 games, everything just started to calm down a bit because the players in those in competitive games got to grips with what he was wanting. They got the squad where they wanted it to be, kind of, and everything just started to fall into place a bit more. So I'm kind of hanging on to the fact that by the international break, we've got Millwall to come on Saturday, and then we've got that trip to Leeds. By the international break, after a bit of a lie down in the dark room and a massage, come Sheffield United, we might be, my heart might have calmed down a little bit.
It's
exciting.
Yeah.
Well, I hope so.
You need to see a doctor.
I do.
How many dates? How many dates with the Colonel have you had post match? What's going on?
That's sort of what we had. What we had 6 friendlies, and I still haven't recovered from the Fenerbahce game. To be fair, 6 friendlies, and then we've had 3 so 9 games so far. And I might start wearing a ticker monitor because I'd love to know what my heart rate is in that first 5 minutes of the game. But it's balmy. Prutts, what do you think it'd be like to play in?
Balmy is a good word to use. I think it would be, without dialing it down, I think there'd be an element of fun to it. It's obviously a transformative way of playing, considering what the finger that was pointed at Liam last season was, which was a lot of the ball, but no sense of the urgency at times needed to create something in a game, and a patience which seemed interminable at times. I think if you're used to it helps with the evolution of players as well. You can't just play one way for your whole career. You can't expect to dominate possession for the whole of your career. So it gives them a different gear, I think, hopefully for the players. That there is an element of it being quite exhaustive of both physical attributes and mental attributes to be able to kind of stay in the game and concentrate for that level of time. If it feels like everything's going at 100 miles an hour around you, then it's a slightly different thing. But seemingly, you'd think they're bringing in the type of players that can handle that information.
Can I interrupt you on that?
Of course, mate.
Yeah. Just on the having watched them play on the mental side, is there much more pressure on the defenders? Because they're having to, and the keeper and goalkeepers are not footballers, but they're having to play more football. The defenders are under pressure all the time.
Busier, aren't they? Yeah, they're busier.
Really tricky situations, and so they don't get a turn off time in this sort of football. To me, not that footballers should turn off, but the mental pressure, being always switched on. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's a great shout because you've got to be on highlight anyway as a footballer, regardless of where you're on the pitch. Even more so if you're a defender, because I was having this chat with my lad the other day when you're explaining taking chances on where you should take chances and what you should do with a hospital pass or what you should do with someone that's not given a gift but passed over a bomb to you. And it's a sliding scale of threat as you get further down the pitch, doesn't it? Lose the ball as a centre forward. You've got 2 more lines and a goalkeeper to dig you out. Lose the ball as a midfielder, you've got 1 more line and a goalkeeper to dig you out. Lose the ball as a defender, you're hoping to God that the goalie does his job. And the goalie, again, is reversed that and thinking, trouble's way up on the hill. and suddenly it's right in front of him. So there is an element of it being a constant effort of concentration. As you say, Ben, we totally get that as footballers, you should be concentrating anyway. We absolutely get that. But if you're playing in the way that Lee wanted the team to play, where there was a lot of building and time to adjust and time to kind of set the scene of what's going to happen to as much to a degree as you could possibly do in a live football match. It's not full of set pieces, is it? But that sense of, and I don't think for 1 second this is the case, but I understand how he wants to play football and almost a kind of giving a whatever about it. He sounds, Baz, when he talks that, well, this is what we're doing, this is what I want to do, and I've been told it's fine and we're going to get on with it. So there is an element of, well, the manager wants us to play like this. So it's not all kind of complete harem scarum. It's we're actually setting up, not to invite chaos on because that sounds unprofessional, and invite pressure on, that sounds unprofessional, but to be ready at all times for it breaking down.
Prutts, he said, when I was talking to him on Saturday, he said a one-liner which I thought was really, really pertinent. And he said, I've had 8 years to perfect my philosophy. I've been working on my philosophy for 8 years. My players have had 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And that is when you actually take a step back and you think, well, yeah, of course it's going to take time. I spoke to Danny Roll about this on Wednesday night after the Wednesday game. And I sort of asked him, what did he think about the style? Because he said he was another manager that said it's very different, blah, blah. And he said it will take time. And Rooney echoed that thought on Saturday. And Rooney's seen, God knows how many games he's played in at the top level, and he's watched. He's obviously managed now, and he's saying, I've never ever seen anything like it. So, it is going to take time for these players to get, not perfect it, because I'm not sure you could ever perfect football, but
it's whether that's the thing that really does intrigue me about all this, because, as I said, I'm not a coaching badge to my name, and I do think there is a tendency in football to over intellectualize stuff and kind of preempt it all going according to plan, and it's seeming like a manager or a coach has all the answers by virtue of what the results chuck up. So, having seen highlights of this, and I'm so intrigued to see a full match of it and see what it actually looks like, because to be brutally honest and slightly cynical, there's only so many ways you can do the same thing in football, and this is what irks me about. I understand what the big debate is about football. Obviously, it's the most watched, the most beloved game on the planet, but we can get, and there are platforms and outlets that can get needlessly philosophical about it without kind of going, do you know what? There's 22 men on here that one 11 roughly wants the same thing, another 11 roughly wants the same thing, and somewhere in the middle is what happens in the game. So it's great that we do this and do that, and we want this and we want that. There is still a massive element, and again, this is me not lifting the lid on any kind of the fallacy of what coaching is or what superstar management is. There is an element of good luck. There you go, lads. We've worked on this. Go and see what happens, because it's an instinctively reactive sport, isn't it? It's not all happening as it's always planned, because everybody wants something different, and the rhythms to the game, be it down at home park or be it at the MKM, be it the expectation down in the southwest up against playing at home against the Plymouth Argyle. All of this comes into it, and it gives wonderful outlets and platforms for us to talk about it. But there is still a part of me, like I said, as a 42-year-old former player that's played for some good teams and for some crap teams, that you can look at a manager and think, you've got no idea what you're doing here at all. You're relying on, and I'm relying as a journeyman midfielder on him who can find the back of the net to do it more often than not, and the goalie who's half decent to keep the ball out. And again, that's not me being a smart ass or belittling years and decades of footballing experience and education, because these men that have got into this level are highly educated men that have put a lot of time into learning about the game and philosophies, etc. But there is still a toss of a coin whether your players turn up on a Saturday or a Tuesday night, isn't there?
Absolutely. Fletch, what you got for us?
Nothing. Move on. I can't see the question.
I've got one. This is a question. There's a question from Tom Lehman to the 1904 club. Are City actively recruiting a left back in case Giles goes? That's one for you, Baz.
Loads of fullbacks.
Yeah, I don't think so. The Giles one's really interesting, isn't it? Because obviously we've talked about it all summer. I think the feeling at the minute is that Middlesbrough have kind of moved away from it because they've not got what they wanted. I still think that we'll have to wait and see what happens between now and next Friday. I don't think Giles has looked particularly great in the opening 2 games. I'd probably feel a bit better with him at left back than I did with Matty Jacob. I don't think Giles has looked himself, if I'm honest. There's clearly, I think it doesn't take a rocket scientist to read between the lines. And this, you heard what Tan Kessler said on the radio last weekend, that Giles needs to respect what the club have done, the fact that they've paid a lot of money for him. So I still think that's one to watch. It may well turn out that come Leeds United, he's still here. I hope that's the case because I like Ryan.
I like him.
I like him. I think he's a great lad. He's a very, very good player at this level. And if and it's obviously been unsettling for him we have to. And this is something Prutts has talked about before, and I'm sure can again. We forget that players are humans. I always think back to an interview Colin Frey did on Radio Nottingham donkeys years ago, and he interviewed Nathan Tyson about interest in him. And Nathan Tyson referred to him and other players being, they were kind of referred to as pieces of meat. We just treat that pieces of meat at the cattle market, and nobody cares about us, and we're flogged here, there, and everywhere. And I think it can be difficult for players that, Giles has had interest from Middlesbrough, and I think that is cast iron, and I think there was a feeling that Giles would be happy to go back and play for Carrick. He's not that move hasn't happened, and it might not happen now. And Giles is going to have to get his head down and focus on the fact that he's now going to be at City at least until January or beyond. But it is difficult for players, isn't it, Prutts?
It is. It's part and parcel of what it is. I do totally get that, and I think I was chatting about it on a Nottingham Forest podcast with a colleague of yours about it the week about interested players and how.
He was on Football Focus. I've seen that many pictures, screen grabs of him of Davis on Football Focus. He
was. Yeah. It must have been a quiet week. You're not chucking him on if it's a busy footballing week, hey? Let's be honest, bless him. I'd say that with love. I mean, did he listen to this? I don't know. But it's, there is that side of it. I do totally get that. And again, maybe I sound a bit old and a bit cynical about it, but that's part of the job, isn't it? It's the other end of it, which I've experienced both sides of it, where at the start of your career, you are people are interested in you, and at the end of the career, when no bugger's interested in you, they're both challenging times. One's marginally better than the other, of course, because it's an inherently positive thing to be wanted. The other side of it is, as you get older and realise that, going back to Fletch's analogy about mileage and games under your belt, that it doesn't really count for much when people are willing to kind of take a bit of a punt. But I do, there is the human side of me understands that kind of Nathan Tyson aspect of it. Like I said, the older cynic in me thinks, get on with it. It's a well-paid job. People will give the right arm for it.
Go on, Birdsey. You've got your arm in the air again.
His right arm.
I'd agree with Prutts. I would agree with Prutts on that. Just to mention a couple of, we've got a lot of response to the 1904 club. We've discussed this one, but just to give a few people a name check, Adam Setterington said there was transfer talk of a mystery striker who could change the championship dynamics. Is this still the case? We've already discussed a striker, and we can't get the name out of Baz. FPL Sheppy says, just on a wider sort of scale, looking at we're extending a pre-season into the actual season and getting away with it. Once the squad is complete, settled, and on board with Walter's tactics, I'm very optimistic. Let's not panic. I'm not sure anybody's panicking. The thing I picked out the opening 2 league games is they've still got that character and resilience about them because they've come from behind in both games and got results. Personally, I think this is, given the circumstances, this is a really good start to the season. There's no real reason to panic. I can't see any reason to panic.
I think
Fletch.
Go on, Fletch.
Sort of on the fence, really, because my counter argument to that would be why are they falling behind in the first place? I know that sounds very blunt, but I think they seem to come alive more in games when the situation or the pressure becomes more intense. So if they fall behind, then you can't dilly-dally around with the ball at the back or whatever. You have to go forward and you have to take the shackles off and you have to run forward and this, that and the other. And they're good at that. You just want them to be like that, I think, from the first couple of minutes, more than not. Because
they have been, but they just have been really, really poor defensively, making errors.
What I'm getting at is that Tim said on the radio that he wants them to be even quicker. So he feels that it's not at full pace yet, and he references the fact that they're still passing it back toward Pando in goal. So it really does feel like it's just going to be all out attack throughout the season, and I don't see why they're creating that sort of element of danger in the first place, But I'm more, even though I like attacking football, I'm old fashioned. I'd rather grind out results. I'm glad that they've drawn. I'm glad they've not lost. Let's put it that way. But there's still, for his philosophy, as we've touched upon, I still think there's plenty more to come from them. But I'll still hold on to the claim that I still think they're not very good at the back under this system.
Yeah, I'd agree. There's loads of other things we're not going to get time to touch on. One thing I want to quickly touch on is Jared Dublin. He's the new head of recruitment. He's, funny enough, he left Stoke. Lee Darnborough went to Stoke, and Jared Dublin's replaced Lee Darnborough at Hull City. I think he signed. He was at in the Potteries for 11 months, and he signed 24 players. And I think Alex Neil, when he was manager at Stoke, said, he could name the best left back in Sweden. So it's interesting to see the effect that Jared Dublin is having on City's recruitment, and I suspect that one or two of the players that they're trying to sign have come from, his stable of players. Prutts, do you know much about him and the job he did at Stoke?
Well, we're going to be quite flippant then. The job that he did at Stoke, or what Stoke have been doing since they came down from the Premier League, which is nothing at all apart from sign players.
Yeah, exactly.
God knows. I've got the Stoke side that I watched last season. Could be good, could not be good. Very, very standard Championship fare. So I don't know. With Shuey in charge, they're a band that we've got a lot of time for. I think there's potential to be upwardly mobile, but they have chronically underperformed since they've come down. I've spoken to many managers that have been through the door at Stoke. There's a lot of players there, and there has been a lot of players. There's a lot of crossover with different managers' players. So I've got no idea at all whether this is it bears fruit, or whether he gets what Sweden's first choice left back. We're talking about left backs again. So no, remains to be seen. And again, with that, with signings, as I've always maintained, there is a hefty element, of course, of research and a lot of time put into gaining an opinion on a player. After that, you just hope to God that he comes in and it pays off.
One thing that we're not going to get time to talk about, and we'll save it for next week, is the goalkeeper situation, whether he sticks with Pandora or brings in Richopi. But we've only got a couple of minutes left. Millwall on Saturday, and Fletch, you just touched on City defensively, and I think that's been a theme. Millwall have conceded 7 goals in their 2 league games. We're in control at Bristol City, and then ended up losing to a Scott Twine winner 4-3. Conceded 3 at home to Watford on the opening day. This, Burnsy, do you feel that if they were to beat Millwall on the back of 2 draws, that would represent, given the fact that they're learning on the job in front of all of us lot, a brand new philosophy, lots of new players coming in, coming out. 5 points from the first 3 games would represent a decent start, given what we know and what we've been talking about.
I think that'd be a really good start. Given where they are, because they're not ready, then they're still not ready. They've not got a fully formed squad, and he's still trying to get his system in place in terms of how they play. So to have 5 points after 3 games, I think would be an excellent start. And I think he might change the keeper. And the good thing is he's got a week to work with them. So I think that's a good thing. I suspect we might see Hughes on Saturday as well. And we'll see where they go, and if they can plug midfield, if they can get a midfielder in, because they do seem porous in midfield. Why can't they beat Millwall? But
Millwall, I mean, for me, Millwall are in my bottom 3 in the season predictions. I'm tipping them to go down. So it'd be one of those where if you can't beat them at home, even if you are still undercooked tactically, there's still a team that I think most people will get results from. And it'd be one of those where if they don't win and City fall to a bang average place in the table, that's going to be one of the results you look back on in May and think, should have picked up points against them, should have picked up points against these, this, that, and the other. So for me, you can't really say it's a must win after 3 games, but I'd be incredibly disappointed if they didn't win.
Yeah.
A should win, Prutts, indeed.
Yeah, Prutts, go on.
No, I agree with Fletch. What you saw from Millwall at the end of last season was phenomenal, really. They were a banging form side that ended up home and hosed and almost kind of looking back over the shoulder, wondering what all the fuss was about with regards to them potentially going down, but not started at all well. As you said, shipping goals. We saw that, and again, sorry to reference Leeds, but having covered them on Saturday after 2 games where they shipped 3 goals back to back, they offered little going forward, but they were resolute defensively. You might see something similar from Millwall travelling to the MKM. That it might not be pretty, and it might have to be one of those ones that Fletch was alluding to with grinding out a result. But I think as an early season yardstick, then it's one that City, as I said, should be winning. If there's any aspirations at all or concrete ambition of bettering 7th place.
One thing I'd like to just add right on the end is if they get a clean sheet, I think defensively that will give them an awful lot of confidence tactically.
Well, they haven't had any. I know, and I'm conscious that you can't always throw in pre-season results, but Walter's not won a game yet. They've not kept a clean sheet, and frankly, they haven't looked at any point in any of those games.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. I think they'll go into their next game if they keep a clean sheet on such a high defensively, because I think that'll just clear some of that. Some of the stuff that's in their mind, because they've got so much to work with.
Sorry to be stupid here, but I'm not sure the philosophy is built on keeping a clean sheet.
No, I don't think it is.
That's a concern.
Great show.
It's not.
No, and if that's the case, then you're absolutely right. Going back to your original point, Burnsy, which you need to have firepower to outshoot the opposition. Right now, exactly. With what we've seen, on evidence of what we've seen so far, it isn't there as yet.
No. Boys, thank you very much. We'll call it a day there because I know we're probably boring people now, and you've all got stuff to do. Prutts, any other business?
Any other business?
What podcast do you want to plug?
Nothing at the moment. The 2nd season of our motorbike one's coming very shortly. But other than that, no. I like dipping my toe into this one, as you all know. It's a pleasure to get back up and running. And what I've seen so far, the Championship and Leagues 1 and 2, it's been a cracking start to the season.
Lovely job, Burnsy.
Given we're allowed the chance to plug podcasts, check me out on the Curiosity Cast, which is all about Hull and questions about Hull. There's a fascinating one up with a representative from the deep who's an expert in sea turtles and jellyfish. Who knew? It's very good. Curiosity Cast.
That's not what I thought you were going to say when you referenced the name of it. Fletch, go for it.
If anyone fancies tuning in to listen to Scarborough Athletic tomorrow night, if they've got a bit of time on their hands, go for it. It'll be on Radio York as I nip to Chorley, Baz.
Nice.
Chorley FM coming in your ear.
Coming in your ears.
What a way to finish. Look, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And as ever, we didn't get to everybody, but we do read them all at the 1904 Club. And we will be back again soon. Thanks for watching.